Thomas and Friends Retold. Episode 9. Tenders and Turntables. Henry and Gordon were lonely when Thomas left the yard to run his branch line. They missed him very much, had more work to do, and had to fetch their own coaches. Gordon thought he was too important to fetch his own coaches, and even though Henry was recently repainted green, he felt unusually conceited. James grumbled too. "We get no rest! We get no rest!" they all complained. But the coaches only laughed. "You're lazy and slack! You're lazy and slack!" they answered. Altogether, the three engines were causing Sir Topham Hatt a great deal of trouble. The big stations at both ends of the line each had a turntable. Sir Topham Hatt made them so that the tender engines can be turned around, because it is dangerous for them to go fast backwards. Little tank engines like Thomas don't need turntables. They can go just as well backwards as forwards. But to hear Gordon talk, you would have thought that Sir Topham Hatt had given him a tender just to show how important he was. One day, Thomas was waiting with Annie and Clarabelle at Elsbridge Station. Gordon was there and talked to Thomas. "You don't understand, little Thomas. We tender engines have a position to keep up. It doesn't matter where you go, but we are important. And for Sir Topham Hatt to make us do shunting, fetch our own coaches, and go on some of those dirty sidings, well, it's not the proper thing." Thomas chuffed and went off with Annie and Clarabelle. "Disgraceful!" hissed Gordon as he ran backwards to the turntable. It was on a windy place close to the sea, and if he was not on it just right, he'd put it out of balance and made it difficult to turn. Today, Gordon was in a bad temper, and the wind blew fiercely. His driver tried to make him stop in the right place, but Gordon wasn't trying. The fireman tried to turn the handle, but Gordon's weight and the strong wind prevented him. At last, they said, "It's no good. Your big tender upsets the balance. If you were a tank engine, you'd be all right. Now you'll have to pull the next train backwards." And that made Gordon very cross. And when he pulled the express backwards at Elsbridge Station, some boys said, "Look, there's a new tank engine." Oh wait, it's only Gordon back to front. Thomas, Annie, and Clarabelle laughed at this scene. "Hello," he called. "Playing tank engines? In that case, you're a sensible engine. Take my advice. Scrap your tender and have a nice bunker." Gordon said nothing. Even James, puffing by, laughed when he saw him. And Thomas puffed away with his faithful coaches. "Take care, James," hissed Gordon. "You might stick too." "No fear," chuckled James. "I'm not as lazy as you lazy boiler." When James went to the turntable, he thought, "I mustn't stick." James stopped at just the right place to balance the table, and it could now swing easily. Gordon arrived just in time to see everything. James turned much too easily. The wind puffed him around like a top. He couldn't stop. James kept on spinning and spinning until the wind died down, and the table finally slowed to a stop. He was very dizzy indeed. "Well, well, well," said Gordon. "Are you playing roundabouts?" Poor James rolled off the table to Tidmouth Sheds without a word. That night, Henry, Gordon, and James had an indignation meeting. "It's shameful to treat tender engines like this," said James. "I have to go backwards and people think I'm a tank engine," said Gordon. "I spin around like a top and everyone laughs at me," said James. "I told Thomas the other day that my system was out of order and no one understands my case. No one knows what I suffer from," moaned Henry. "And to add to that, Sir Topham Hatt makes us all shunt in dirty sidings," said James. "Disgraceful," said Gordon. "Disgusting," put in James. "Despicable," finished Henry. The three engines were all cross. "Listen," said Gordon, and he whispered something to James and Henry. "That's a great idea," said James. I don't know, said a worried Henry. Don't you think Sir Topham Hatt will get cross if we do that? He'll look silly if we do it, said Gordon. It'll be a nice payback for what he's doing to us, said James. Okay, then, if you say so, said Henry. Right. We'll do it tomorrow, said Gordon. The 3 engines decided to go on strike the next day. But that's a story for another time.